Ah, hello. I knew you would come. Just call it intuition.
Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and in this video we are going to be taking a look at a character from Dark Souls, and not just any character. You might call him the poster boy of Dark Souls, despite never making an appearance on any official covers. It is of course Solaire of Astora. And if you are getting deja vu, that's not surprising. The very first lore video I ever made was on Solaire, but now seems like the perfect time to retread what we know about our Sunlight Warrior. With the release of Dark Souls 3 and the Ringed City, we have closed the book on Dark Souls for the time being. Through Lordran, Drangleic and Lothric we have met countless characters and stories, and perhaps now we can at last answer the question on whether or not he is Gwyn's firstborn. And where better to start than with his name, Solaire. In old European cultures, Sol is the name of our star, the sun. I needn't point out how appropriate that is for a man who so cherishes the sunlight. And what about air? Some have pointed out that Solaire sounds rather like Sol Air, and would put this forth as backing up claims that he was the sun's heir, or in other words, the firstborn of Gwyn. You will also find plenty of landmarks in the world going by air, and that's to say nothing of the very obvious comparison you could draw with the word air as in oxygen. But if you ask me, the most appropriate definition here would be air in the form of a suffix, that is to say, a millionaire, a legionnaire, having its roots in French and Latin, very similar to the ear suffix, such as engineer, pioneer, and so forth. In its most basic sense, it would mean that he is of the sun. That out of the way, who is our sunlight knight?
Ah, hello. You don't look hollow, far from it. I am Solaire of Astora, an adherent of the Lord of Sunlight. Now that I am undead, I have come to this great land, the birthplace of Lord Gwyn, to seek my very own son.
For all the talk of Dark Souls being obtuse and vague, if you consider it, many of the characters will tell you in a very straightforward manner who they are, what it is they desire. So it is with Solaire. Hailing from the land of Astora, he seeks his own son. Just what he means by son we'll touch on in a moment, but first let us talk more about that introduction. You don't look hollow, he informs us, very much like one Oscar of the Undead Asylum. Indeed, the very first words uttered to us in Dark Souls by another person. You're no hollow, eh? Why bring this up? For it seems at some point during development, Solaire was considered to make an appearance at the Undead Asylum. Just take a listen to this unused dialogue.
He has the key. The choice is yours. The way I see it, our fates appear to be intertwined, both undead, both imprisoned in the asylum, and now we both end up here, in a land brimming with hollows. Could that really be mere chance?
What do you make of that? Whilst this could fit in so many places, to me I always imagined it taking place in the Undead Asylum. But who is he referring to? Oscar? The player character? The Asylum Demon? Considering how brief this is, I wondered if he was speaking to Oscar about the player character, but that of course hits a wall when you realise the chosen undead might be either male or female. Still, it is interesting to consider, no? Perhaps at some point our original opening would have been escaping the Undead Asylum along with Oscar and Solaire. One key difference with this would be the implication that Solaire is of our world. In the game as it is, Solaire is the man to explain the ritual of summoning to us. Using the soapstone we can bridge the gap between worlds and call out to one another. He claims that his world and ours may not be in contact for long, which would of course mean that he is not native to our world. But just what does he mean by world? None of the games have ever explained this, and the very nature of time and space in Dark Souls does not adhere to our understanding of reality. One way you might look at it would be to take Ash Lake as a catalyst. If that dreamlike environment exists beneath the world, and our Great Hollow Arch Tree represents our world, perhaps the other arch trees each represent their own world. But that is mere speculation. What about the soapstones that allow us to reach out between realities? There do exist other materials in the Dark Souls world that allow this. Crystal lizards, for example, appear to be able to phase from one reality to another when agitated. If you're after more of that talk, have a look at my video on Ludleth from Dark Souls 3. Soapstone, however, is a real material in our world, one that is often used for carving, formed by, in short, the movements of tectonic plates. Perhaps soapstones in Dark Souls are from an earlier time during the Age of Ancients, before the advent of fire. Whatever the case, Solaire is eager to assist the chosen undead, and to partake in jolly cooperation. This, of course, is to further his goal of finding his own son. And what does that mean? Well, let's start with the old popular theory before moving on to some more likely scenarios. Back in the day, it was an extremely popular theory that Solaire was, in fact, the firstborn son of Lord Gwyn, banished and stripped of his deific powers. His obsession with the sun, his great might, and of course, his reference to the sun as a wondrous father, serving to back this up. In my old video on Solaire, I discussed at length evidence for and against the idea, but ultimately I was of the opinion that Solaire was not Gwyn's son, that it was, if anything, a red herring. Dark Souls 3 all but confirms this with the introduction of the Nameless King, the Nameless Lord, heavily implied to be Gwyn's firstborn son. Solaire, however, still pledges his allegiance to the Warriors of Sunlight. Did he know about the Nameless King? It wouldn't seem likely given he was expunged from the annals of history, his statues destroyed. Yet he remains ever watchful, watching over his faithful warriors, including Solaire. So what else could he possibly mean by son? You might well consider that even Solaire himself does not know. Along with Siegmeyer of Katarina, it could be that Solaire has set himself a goal to keep focused, to stave off hollowing, a constant threat to the undead. Still, he remarks that he became undead to pursue this desire, so maybe not. But if the chosen undead should proceed through the game in one way, Solaire will end up encountering the sunlight maggot, a curious parasite of Lost Izalith that, when worn upon the head, emits a blinding light. I believe the implication here is that Solaire is possessed by the parasite, though he is not, strictly speaking, hollow. Why? Well, if you examine Solaire during the scene, you will observe that he retains a human appearance, and, more importantly, he utters words. Throughout the franchise, it appears that true hollows are unable of speech. There are of course the two merchants in the Undead book who physically appear to be hollow, but mentally are still sound, same as Lenegrast in Dark Souls 2. But whenever we encounter a character who was previously not hollow and has become hollow, such as the Crestfallen Warrior, they are incapable of speaking. Whether Solaire willingly placed the maggot on his head in an act of desperation or not, it seems to have driven him mad. He puts on a brave front, does Solaire, but even that shield cracks. The further you move through the game, the more he finds his resolve wavering. So how much of his jolly attitude is feigned? Hard to say, but it seems as if Solaire might use laughing as a defense mechanism. Have you ever noticed how much he laughs at situations that aren't exactly humorous? I'm sure you've experienced that yourself at some point during your life, when somebody laughs in an attempt to break the tension, to lighten the mood when they are nervous. Why, Solaire himself at one point even remarks, "Let's just laugh it off," after the chosen undead turns down one of his offers. But then again, strange laughter, chuckles and giggles are commonplace in the Souls series, part of its unique nature. Few other characters remark on Solaire, but Trusty Patches is one of them, exclaiming that he's a fool, but one hell of a mighty fool. And Solaire's armour all throughout the series has told us that there is nothing special about Solaire. His power comes purely from his own training and physical might. Indeed, although he makes no appearance in Dark Souls 2 or Dark Souls 3, his armour and weapons have returned, as did the Warriors of Sunlight and their Sacred Covenant. Curiously, Dark Souls 2 informs us that the sun never sets, and on this day begins the contest to find the sun's truest sun, which suggests those who take up the Golden Mantle are, in some way, taking the same path as the Nameless King. Why, it's almost as if Gwyn or some other entity was using the Covenant to find a replacement god of war. Dark Souls 2 also tells us that Solaire has become a hero of yore, and poses the question, is he no more, or merely hiding? Either way, his absence only intensifies the attraction to these legends. Should you dispose of the Sunlight Maggot before Solaire has a chance to encounter it, he will be found in the same location, bemoaning his luck, questioning his fate, but continue through to the Kiln of the First Flame, and the Chosen Undead has the option to summon Solaire for the final battle against the Lord of Cinder. The director of Dark Souls, Miyazaki, has stated that it is his belief that should the player bring Solaire to the final battle and defeat Gwyn, Solaire will go on to link the fire in his own world. Perhaps that was the answer all along to his son. In linking the fire and extending the age of fire, Solaire himself became the son he so cherished.
There's no telling how much longer your world and mine will remain in contact. But use this. Cross the gaps between the worlds and engage in jolly cooperation.